them all what I'm made up. Strut down the hall, won't stop till I get enough.
You know, just when you think you've kind of got a handle on the political landscape, something shifts, and it forces a total rethink. Today, we're diving into a real head-scratcher.
Okay.
Republicans, I mean, they've long championed tax cuts for the wealthy, right?
Absolutely. It's been core to their platform.
Well, now they're openly considering letting those rates maybe rise as part of getting President Trump's agenda through.
It's a development that honestly would have seemed almost unbelievable not that long ago.
Right.
So yeah, we're going to dig into this surprising turn. We're mainly using a recent NBC News report.
Okay, NBC News.
And for everyone listening, the mission here is really to understand the factors driving this internal debate, this Republican debate, and, what the potential consequences could actually be.
Okay, so let's get straight into it. This unexpected debate.
Yeah.
For years, the idea that lower taxes on the wealthy, are essential for growth.
Yeah.
That was like Republican scripture.
Pretty much. An article of faith, you could say.
Yeah. So to hear whispers, even like open discussions about maybe increasing taxes on this group from within their own party, it's a surprise, to say the least.
It really is. And it highlights how, evolving political realities, economic realities, they can force a reevaluation of even these really deeply held beliefs.
Wow. Yeah.
What's interesting, too, is that this isn't really external pressure. It's a conversation happening inside the party.
Right.
Driven by some very specific needs and, like you said, a changing political climate.
Okay, so what's the first big driver? The report points to, money, basically.
Funding.
Yeah, practicalities. They're aiming to pass what the report calls a massive budget bill.
Massive budget bill. Okay, what's in it that's making them suddenly hunt for cash? Well, the report specifically flags increased spending on two key areas. Immigration enforcement and the military.
Oh, okay. Big ticket items.
Big spending, yeah. And as they try to get this, party line package through Congress, which covers a whole range of government stuff, spending, revenue.
Right, the usual reconciliation process.
Exactly. The question of how you actually pay for it becomes, critical.
Sure.
And this need to offset these pretty substantial costs, it's definitely putting pressure on their, let's say, traditional approach to taxes.
Right, okay. So the purse strings are tight. But it's not just about the immediate need for cash, is it? The article also talks about a big transformation in who votes Republican.
Yeah, this is, I think, a really pivotal piece of the puzzle. The makeup of both parties, demographically speaking, is changing in fascinating ways.
How so?
We're seeing this trend where the Republican Party is, increasingly attracting voters with lower incomes and those without college degrees.
Okay.
And at the same time, Democrats are gaining ground with higher income folks and college-educated Americans.
And the article has some pretty stark numbers on that, right?
It does. They really paint a picture.
Like, okay, 2012, Mitt Romney. He won voters earning over $100,000 a year by, 10 points?
Yep, a solid 10-point margin.
Yeah. Fast forward to 2024. Kamala Harris wins that same group by 4 points over Trump.
It's a complete reversal.
Yeah.
A 14-point swing, essentially.
Fine. That's huge.
It is. And you see the same kind of flip at the other end. So 2012, Obama won voters earning under $50,000 by 22 points. A big gap.
Yeah, dominant.
By 2024, Trump actually won this group by 2 points.
So he took it from a 22-point deficit to a 2-point win.
Exactly. These numbers, they just underscore this really profound realignment happening. Based on income, based on education.
So what does that signal, do you think?
Well, it's interesting, right? Maybe that traditional Republican message, the across-the-board tax cuts, maybe it just doesn't hit the same way with lower-income voters.
They might be more worried about jobs or the safety net, perhaps.
Could be. While maybe higher-income earners are looking at other factors now when they vote. And this shift, it naturally makes the party stop and think, okay, who do we need to appeal to now? Which policies actually resonate with this new coalition?
Makes sense. Fiscal pressure on one side, voter shifts on the other. So how are actual Republicans, senators and leaders reacting? The article names a few.
Yeah, we're seeing kind of a spectrum of responses, which really shows those internal divisions we talked about.
Okay, like who?
Like Senator Kevin Cramer.
Yeah.
He called the internal talks interesting.
Interesting, okay.
And he even mentioned a populism growing in the party. So his comments kind of suggest an openness maybe to rethinking things.
That is pretty notable. And what about Senator Mike Crapo? He's the chair of the Finance Committee, right?
Yeah.
That's a powerful spot for taxes.
Crucial spot. Yeah, Crapo's being a bit more measured. He said he'll listen to my colleagues about letting that top tax rate go back up to 39.6%.
Right, because the current 37% rate is set to expire anyway if they do nothing.
Exactly. It automatically reverts unless they pass something new. So his willingness to even, listen on that point. Well, coming from the finance chair, who usually be fighting hard for lower rates, it signals.
Yeah.
Well, it signals something, a potential shift at least.
And Senator Chuck Grassley, long-timer in the party, he said something too.
He did, yeah, at a town hall. And it was pretty revealing. He basically acknowledged that raising the top rate back to 39.6%, and this is his term, on their working sheet in the Finance Committee.
So it's officially being considered.
It's on the table for discussion, yes. But he was quick to add a caveat, saying it's not guaranteed to happen.
Sure, standard political caution.
But still, it shows the idea is being taken seriously right there in the committee that writes the tax laws.
Fascinating. It's not just senators, though. The article mentions Steve Bannon.
Yeah, Bannon, known for his populist views. He apparently, unprompted, just came out in support of raising taxes on the wealthy.
Really?
Yeah. And even told House Speaker Mike Johnson to focus on that, plus cutting spending.
Huh. So that echoes what Kramer said about growing populism.
It really does. It reflects that sentiment within, certain parts of the Republican movement.
But, okay, not everyone's on board with this populist tax idea, I assume. There must be pushback.
Oh, absolutely. You've got the more, let's say, traditional wing of the party pushing back pretty hard.
Like who?
Senator Ted Cruz, for example. He was firm, said it's a mistake to raise taxes, and basically, I don't think Republicans will do it.
Okay, that sounds like the Ted Cruz we know on taxes.
Pretty much. Classic conservative stance.
And House Majority Leader Steve Scalise.
He chimed in, too. Was on Fox Business, said flat out, I don't support that initiative.
So resistance in House leadership, too, not just the Senate.
Correct. Clear opposition there.
Now, Senator John Cornyn raised a different kind of concern, didn't he? About businesses.
Yes, that's an important practical point he brought up. He's worried that a higher top personal income tax rate could hurt businesses.
How so? Aren't we talking about personal taxes?
Well, yeah, but many businesses, like sole proprietorships, partnerships, S-Corp, they don't pay corporate tax. The owners pay the business income tax through their personal returns. They're called pass-through businesses.
Ah, right. Okay, so a higher top personal rate hits them directly.
Exactly. So Cornyn basically asked, if we do this, would there be carve-outs? Exceptions for small businesses.
Which makes it much more complicated.
It really does. It highlights potential, maybe unintended, consequences.
Does the NBC report get into the sort of the bigger economic arguments? Like beyond Cornyn's point, what about the macro effects?
It doesn't go super deep into economic modeling, but Cornyn's concern definitely hints at that classic argument, right? That higher income taxes might, stifle investment or job creation, especially for smaller firms.
And the counter argument.
Well, proponents might say the extra revenue could cut the debt or maybe fund programs that boost the economy in other ways. It's the usual debate.
It really shows the tightrope they're walking, doesn't it?
Totally.
Address the budget, appeal to these new voters, but don't alienate the base or, potentially hurt businesses. And it's worth remembering, like the article says, cutting taxes for the rich was totally non-negotiable for Trump just a few years ago.
Exactly. The 2017 tax law, that was their signature achievement. Big cuts for corporations, high earners.
Even though it got some political heat at the time.
Right. So to even be talking about letting rates go up now, it just shows the pressure they're under.
And the article mentions divisions within Trump's own team.
Yeah, split, basically.
Yeah.
Between the populists who might favor taxing the wealthy more and the traditional Republicans who still want across-the-board cuts. That push and pull.
And there are political warnings, too, right? About not extending the cuts. Someone named McLaughlin.
Yeah, John McLaughlin, he's a Trump pollster. He's apparently sounding the alarm, arguing that if these tax cuts aren't extended, Republicans could lose the House and Senate. He even showed polling data, apparently done for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, to Susie Wiles.
Trump's chief of staff.
Well, expected chief of staff. Showing support for extending the cuts. His big worry is that letting them lapse would be seen as the largest tax increase ever.
Wow. Okay.
And that it could hurt the economy, hurt their election chances. He mentioned Wisconsin and Florida specifically.
You mentioned that populist sentiment earlier. Is there much evidence for that beyond Bannon or Kramer's comment?
No.
Is it widespread in the base?
Well, the NBC report doesn't give us, specific polling on that question. But, the fact that figures like Bannon are loud about it, plus Kramer's observation, it suggests it's definitely a real thing. Probably influential with a slice of the base, maybe especially those non-college, lower-income voters we talked about.
Okay, so you've got the internal fight, the warnings, but are there signs of maybe a compromise? Or ways they might try to sell this change?
Well, Senator John Thune acknowledged that a higher bracket just for, say, million-dollar earners has been discussed.
So maybe target just the very top.
That could be one path. But Thune stressed, you need agreement with the House, with the White House. It's not simple.
And Senator Tom Tillis had another angle.
Yeah, Tillis sort of framed it pragmatically. He said looking at the top rate could create headroom for pay-fors.
Meaning?
Basically, find ways to offset the cost of the rest of the budget bill, make the total package less expensive on paper.
Okay, a fiscal maneuver.
Kind of. And then Senator Mike Rounds had a really interesting way to frame the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. What did he say?
He pointed out that if they just let the top rate go back to where it was before 2017, they could argue it's not really a tax hike.
How's that not a hike?
Well, they'd frame it as choosing not to implement another tax reduction. See the difference? It's letting a temporary cut expire, not actively raising taxes from a baseline.
Clever messaging. Spin, essentially.
Political messaging, yeah. Could be crucial to avoid the tax hike label.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've seen the voter shifts, the budget needs.
And now how different Republicans are trying to navigate it all?
Exactly.
Yeah.
From Crapo listening to Cruz saying no way to Rounds thinking about the framing.
So let's try and pull this together. It really feels like the Republican Party is wrestling with this fundamental tension.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Their traditional belief, tax cuts for the wealthy, is bumping up against, well, reality, the need to fund things, and a changing voter base.
That sums it up pretty well. This whole debate, which kind of came out of nowhere for many people, it just highlights these really complex pressures.
Yeah.
You've got fiscal responsibility clashing with ideology, clashing with electoral strategy.
It really does make you wonder, okay, what happens next? What are the actual economic impacts, the political fallout, if these rates do change? That voter shift data we talked about.
Those numbers were really something, a stark reversal.
Just highlights the scale of the change.
Exactly. And that kind of brings us to the final thought for everyone listening today.
Yeah.
Given everything we've discussed, these internal debates, the shifting politics, the potential framing tactics, what does all this suggest about where Republican economic policy might be headed? And maybe more importantly, their ability to appeal to all these different voter groups going forward. It's clearly a story that's still unfolding, and honestly, the outcome is going to have some pretty big implications.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're Bobby doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.